Due to the absence of Councillor Lewis, we need to seek a nomination for somebody to chair the meeting this morning. Do we have a nomination? Right, there's a nomination for Councillor Cooper. Can somebody second that? That's seconded. So by a show of hands, can you all vote in favour? Right, that's unanimous. Over to you, Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, nice to see you all this morning. And although I can hardly see David, the two Davids at the back, I've got to say with my eyesight, but hi. Yeah, it's good to see you. So we're here for the General Purposes Committee, and so we'll move straight on with the agenda. So item 1, appeals against refusal of inspection of documents.
There are no appeals, Chair.
Item 2, exempt information, possible exclusion of the press and public.
There's no exempt information on the agenda today.
Thank you. And number 3, late items.
And there's no late items.
And number 4, can I ask at this point if any member of the GPC has got any declaration of disposable pecuniary interests or any other interests they want to declare? No? That's fine. So we'll move on to number 5, which is apologies for absence.
Yeah, we've got apologies this morning from Councillors Arif, Cohen, Lewis and Lennox, and we have Councillors Dawson and Rafiq sitting as substitutes today. Sorry, Councillor Dawson. Yeah.
Okay, and you're very welcome, Councillor Dawson and Councillor Rafiq. Okay, so number 6, agenda item number 6, minutes of the last meeting. So we need to receive and approve the minutes. Is everybody okay with that? Any matters arising from the minutes? Good, so we move swiftly on to item number 7, which is a proposal to amend the schedule of sites governed by the council's bylaws for pleasure grounds, public walks and open spaces. And we've got Richard and Martin with us today, who are going to just quickly highlight a couple of items in the report. So Richard, do you want to make a start?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. I'm Richard A. Forge. I am from Legal Services, and I am lead for prosecutions and also in charge of bylaw enforcement and review. The bylaw that is intended to be reviewed or is being reviewed is the Pleasure Grounds, Public Walks and Open Spaces bylaw, which was created back in 2008 and has never been reviewed since that date. It was created using one of the newly created model bylaws that the Secretary of State had created with a view to regulations coming in to assist the easier review, amendment or revocation of bylaws. But the bylaw rules for change, creation, etc., being governed by the Local Government Act of 1972. The bylaws alternative procedure England regulations didn't come in until 2016, and the amendments or benefits of using the model bylaw format were only to the process. They perhaps weren't as wide-reaching as we had hoped. It's as a consequence of that we are having to trouble this committee with what is, on the face of it, a fairly small and we hope routine review. The bylaws themselves are lengthy and they affect parks and public space areas across the city. As a result, the schedules of the land affected by these bylaws attached to the bylaws is extensive. As a result of this review, the council is suggesting the removal of only 9 of those sites. I'm here today if there are any questions relating to the bylaw review process, and also because we are effectively removing protection of the bylaws from these 9 open spaces. If there are any questions relating to enforcement options which might still exist or exist in the future, I can answer those. Martin is here today to answer any questions in relation to the review process, the sites that have actually been selected. In relation quickly to the report that you have in front of you, the alternative procedure regulations still require us to go through a variety of consultation processes and an application for consent by the Secretary of State. There are in this process 2 consultation periods, the first of which was a reduced period, not the usual 28 days, on the basis that this ultimately was going to a second consultation period when the full draft bylaw would be available to the public. After the first consultation period, for which there were responses, and the report highlights what those responses were, a assessment of regulatory burden had to be carried out. This is a requirement under the regulations. This was carried out and was published, as is the regulation requirement, on the website. And the conclusions are set out at page 5 of the report. I don't know, councillors, whether or what plans you have attached, but I am aware in recent days the Hare Hills Cottages plan has been removed from the list of amendments required.
Okay, thank you, Richard, for that introduction. Has any members got any questions or comments on that report? David Blackburn, I just about saw your hand there at the back.
That's it. Try to remember which book it was. Can I say I was, and it probably because we've not done this before, but I was somewhat disturbed when I read some of the report. But what I can say is I've had a meeting with officers who have briefed me, and subsequently they've answered some questions. So I'm happy with what's within this report. But I think there could have been a bit more clarity about the background to it in the written report, but the verbal report you've just got covers it all, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. If there are no other questions or comments on this report, then can I take it that we can move the recommendations? Okay, thank you. And we'll move on to the next item, which is item 8, and that's the changes to the council functions following the directorate changes. And we've got Paul Simpson here with us today to talk us through this. Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. This is a report which in short form is it moves the caravan functions from its current home, which is within the Director of Resources, to the Director of Communities, Housing and Environment, such that the officer delegation scheme will then match the changes which arose out of the leaders' executive arrangements, which came into effect at the beginning of the municipal year. The changes are to Part 3, Section 2C of the officer delegation scheme, and it's specifically in respect to the Director of Resources, which is at Appendix 1 of the agenda item, and the Director of Communities, Housing and Environment, which is at Appendix 2. Unless members have any questions, I would ask that they carry out the recommendations within the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Paul. Any questions or comments on this one? Okay, can I ask that the recommendations are approved in this report? Thank you. So we can move on to item 9, which is, hang on, let me move quickly. The council meetings, and we've got Andy here to speak to us about that.
Thank you. Yes, hiding around the corner. Yes, thank you, Chair. There's 3 matters in this report. Firstly, an update for members in terms of the change in circumstances following the ending of the remote meeting regulations and the additional steps that we're needing to take at present time due to the current COVID restrictions. Just highlighting to members paragraphs 17 to 21, where the legal implications are set out, and paragraphs 22 to 25, where the risk management arrangements are summarised as well. Again, linked to our previous experience during the pandemic, the report also looks at webcasting. Members will recall that previously webcasting was limited to executive board and meetings of full council. There's been a lot more public engagement and viewing of meetings since we took them online, and this report asks members to endorse the extension of webcasting to all meetings that take place in this room, in committee room 6 and 7, and also in the council chamber where we have the webcasting technology installed. And also finally, Chair, there was a government call for evidence following the cessation of the remote meeting regulations, government asking for views from local authorities on whether legislation should be introduced to enable remote meetings in the future to continue. Appendix 1 to this report provides a copy of the council's response to that consultation, that call for evidence, which was informed by discussions with lead officers and through them with chairs of committees. Members are asked to approve the recommendation set out on page 1 of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Andy, for going through that for us. Has anybody got any questions or comments for Andy? Councillor Carter?
Yeah, we've found that for our community committees that webcasting it has been absolutely brilliant. We've had lots more engagement with the public. And I think one of the very useful things about it, particularly for officers actually, is that there's a proper record of it. So you can go back and look and see what people have said. So absolutely do endorse it and hope we can keep it going for as many committees as possible.
Thanks, Councillor Carter. If there are no other comments on that one, can I ask that we approve? Sorry, David. Councillor Jenkins.
Yeah, just a small thing, really. We had a plans panel meeting yesterday in the council chamber, and it was quite hard to hear people. And the planning officer said that in 1930 they had to suspend the meetings because of the acoustics not being good enough. And I don't think things have changed. So Councillor Campbell, I think he couldn't hear what was being said. And if there's any way in which the acoustics could be improved, or even everything being a bit louder, because as we get older, it does become a bit more difficult.
Thanks for those comments, Councillor Jenkins. And I have to say, actually, with the COVID pandemic, actually, neither are we supposed to shout loudly, or because of the impact that might have on spreading of the infection. So that might have something to do with it as well, Councillor Jenkins. But yes, I'm sure officers will take those comments back and see what can be done about that. So thank you. So with that in mind, can we move the recommendations of that report? Okay, well, that's great. Thank you very much. I didn't manage to break the record of the speediest general purposes ever, but it's been nice to see you all, and thanks for coming this morning. Bye.